Welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Your host, Jill Hart, the Coach's Alchemist. Couldn't be more excited to have you join us today. On this podcast, we celebrate the champions of change, the up-and-coming life, health and transformational coaches who are fearlessly stepping forward to make a difference in the world. Get ready for inspiring stories, practical tips, and powerful moments that will motivate you to make a positive change in your life and those around you. We're happy to have you join us on this incredible journey as we dive into the world of life, health, and transformational coaches who are lighting up the path towards a better tomorrow.
Hi, and welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Today we have with us Karla Fraser. She is the founder and chief executive officer of Expat Career and Expat Career Specialist. She's a coach of higher education consultant. And as your Expat Career Coach Strategist, Karla is here to help you realize your expat dream with confidence. As your higher education consultant, she's here to partner with you to create the best experiences for your student and staff. Welcome to the show, Karla. It's really great to have you here. And we were talking about where you live, which is not a country called Dubai. So,
True. Yes, thank you, Jill. Great to be here. Glad to be able to share with you and your audience. So yes, I live in the United Arab Emirates. This is the country. Most people refer to where I live as Dubai, which is an emirate, and that is one of the 7 emirates within the country of the United Arab Emirates. But it's the most popular one. So ironically, the country gets nicknamed by its popular spot.
Yeah, it's like calling America Texas or something.
Or New York. Yeah.
Or New York or wherever. Picking one of the states that does not actually represent the whole country. So anyway, how did you get into being an expat? What made you, we were talking about you've been there like twice and the first time was 15 years ago, but what prompted you to leave wherever you were from?
Yeah. So it goes back to childhood. I'm a third culture kid. So I grew up between 2 countries, and one of them being the country of my family. So I grew up between the US and Jamaica. And I spent my childhood in Jamaica and spent my teenage years in the US. And I kept going back and forth in between that time. And so the concept of living abroad or moving was not foreign to me. And then I've also had extended family members that have lived in other places, lived in the UK, went and lived and worked in the Panama Canal, lived and worked and went to Cuba. So just as a kid growing up, I was like, okay, I live between 2 countries. So to become an expat where I'm using my career, my skills, my expertise to live and work abroad, wasn't out of the scope of my thinking. It was just a matter of how I wanted to do it, and which is part of the reason why I got my educational background in history, geography, and international affairs.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I grew up mostly overseas also. Like I would live most of my childhood up until high school overseas. And we were talking a little bit about the culture shock that you help people get through that. And I can relate to that totally. My dad was in the military, so we moved around a lot because of that. But there was always somebody there to greet you, to help you through the first few months that you're in a new country, because it is so totally different. No matter where you're coming from, when you go to a different country, the culture is different. And there's things that you do that you're going to offend people and not even realize you're offending them. And they may do things that offend you too, and they don't mean it. It's like, this is just how we do things here.
Very true. And I think that is one of the important things that any expat, digital nomad or otherwise, you just going to another country, just realizing that there's going to be some level of culture shock. Unless you're spending a week there and you're just on vacation, once you start spending over 30 days, you're going to start to realize some of the differences between what you're accustomed to and what is the custom norms and traditions of wherever you are. And so one of the things I try to help folks, especially folks who are going long term, is through an e-course that I have, is to understand culture shock, culture differences through that, and get a good understanding, get a baseline understanding, start to build some coping skills, start to understand things are going to frustrate you, but what is your purpose there? Why did you take on this experience and not let the fact that, food's different, food may be spicier than you're used to, or, because
Served
of
at different times.
Exactly, things are just quite different. And, don't let that frustrate you, and just, you plan for it. You know that it's coming.
Mm-hmm. So do you help people when they're transitioning to like any country, or are you specific to the United Arab Emirates?
So I typically work with folks in regards to any country, any region. I create a broad-based knowledge in working with expats in general. Folks in higher education get the specialty because that's my career expertise, and I know that space the best. But overall, I can help folks navigate whichever space, whatever region. I think because of my geographical background, my political science and international affairs, I can help them navigate, figure out the geopolitics, figure out a lot of different things that will impact where they look, why they look there. Is that a good spot for you to be looking right now?
Yeah.
Where are the opportunities? You may want to go to Europe, but Europe may not be where the opportunities are for you in your particular field at the moment. And how you can reevaluate and figure out if Asia, where the opportunities are, is somewhere where you want to go.
Yeah, that's really a good point. And in terms of like figuring out where your best opportunities are. So let me ask you, I'm developing a question in my head and it's coming out kind of convoluted here, but
No worries.
When would people come to you? They come to you if they're like, I'm thinking that I just want to leave the country that I'm in. And do you only work with people from America, or do you work with people like just moving around the globe in general?
So let's tackle the first part. Or the second part first, and then we'll go into the next part. I work with people from around the globe. My clients have been from different countries and want to explore different other regions of the world. And when you come to me, it varies. We can start with as simple as a 1-hour exploratory strategic conversation about, hey, this is a thought in my head. What are my options? And I can kind of talk you through to say, okay, based on your career, based on your skills, these may be your options. And then you can say, okay, and that can be it. Or you can say, you know what, I'm in this space. I've done some of my pre-research. I kind of have a sense of where I want to go or what I want to do, but I need help in figuring that out. And that could be help with your resume and cover letter to make sure that it's fit in a specific region. That could be help in understanding the job search process in different parts of the world because it's different. It could be help in understanding benefits and offers and what you should be looking for. It could be, okay, I got an offer. I need to start planning and thinking about a move. What do I need to do? I have a house. I have a cat.
That's
what
just
do
a
I
big
need to
deal.
do? Right. And with you, and when you were, a young person moving with your family, the military takes care of all of that for you pretty much. You as an expat going on your own, you have to navigate all these things. What documents you need to be thinking about. If you have children and you're divorced, what legal documents you need to have if your children are under the age of 18 to take them out of the country and not have any challenges. So we talked through a lot of those nuances as part of where we are in the process. So I can help you along the process up until you land and you're managing that culture shock.
That's really fascinating. It's a great gift in a way to humanity, because I know from personal experience that there is so much involved. It's one thing to move from like one house to another, or one state to another, or one territory to another that's within a country, versus leaving the country that you're in and packing up your whole household, which in itself, just the logistics of getting your stuff from point A to point B can be like overwhelming if you start to it's just one small piece of a much larger puzzle. And thinking about things like, is your future employer going to help you with this? How much is it going to cost? Is the cost benefit ratio there for you to actually move your whole household over there? Or would it make more sense for you just to go there by yourself and live, and then move your family over later? I mean, these are questions that people really need to explore in depth before they start sending out resumes or thinking they're just going to leave their country, unless they're really young. I guess if you don't have much and you're by yourself and you're single, then yeah, pack your backpack and grab your passport and you're on your way. But there's different kind of tiers in the process, depending on where you are and what your goals are, your end goals.
Absolutely true. And I think, when you have a family, or you have pets, or you have elderly parents, you have to factor in a lot of different things. Are you going to sell your home? Are you going to rent it out? What are you planning to do with your assets in your home country? And that could be any home country. Of course, I tend to have a tendency to talk about US or North America in general, but that could be Zimbabwe, that could be the Philippines, that could be Germany. It's where you're moving from. What are the things you need to put in place in order to do that? I have a colleague that we're colleagues, and, she just recently moved to the UAE. But she has to navigate through her embassy a variety of different processes in order to be an overseas worker. And they're different than what my process is. So each place has its own. I have it a bit easier with a US, as a US citizen, that I don't have to register with the government. Now, they do say we need to register for safety reasons, but I don't have to register as an overseas worker or an expat or anything, whereas this person does. So it's very different for different people, but a lot of the processes are very similar. You still have to pack, you still have to decide with your family. You still have to figure out what is like you said, the cost benefit ratio. Is that package good enough? Do I wait for something else? Do I need to learn a language? Do I, a variety of things.
Kids add a whole nother layer. You were talking about, if you're divorced and being able to take your kids out of the country, but also educating your kids in different countries requires different tax. You can't just like show up and think you're going to stick your kids in the public school, because different countries have different public school systems, and not all of them are open to just anybody walking in the door. And there are other options. I know I went to an international school for a period of time when I was living overseas. The the military does provide an education for their employees, for lack of a better word. But I know a lot of times when you go overseas, there are other educational options for you available. And, you know, maybe even homeschooling, but I would imagine that different countries have different rules around homeschooling that aren't necessarily the same as from the place that you're leaving, and you need to investigate those too.
Yes, and yeah, all of those things apply. So whether or not your company or organization will contribute to the education of your children, whether or not you're going to put them in a public or private institution. And just remember, some of the public institutions are not necessarily going to be in English either. If English is your first language and you need to go to an English speaking institution. So you have to navigate some of that. Or if you're French speaking and you need to find a French speaking school for your son or daughter to go to, because eventually they maybe end up back in, let's say you're from France, in the France education system for their tertiary degree or their higher education degree. So those things are all important to navigate. If you have a partner or spouse that's coming with you, what are their responsibilities and duties? Are they also going to be job searching? Are they going to be at home? Do they in the now 2024 will they be working remotely? And in some cases that works well because that job can be, come along with an accompanying partner. But then you have to navigate a time zone. If their job is remote, can you manage the time zone difference? So there's a lots of different nuances based on your career, based on family structure, based on, whatever you can think of. If it happens in your daily life now, you have to think about it happening in your daily life abroad.
With a whole different flavor to it, because when you go abroad, and you're not going on vacation, it's a whole new experience. And just traveling from state to state can be an interesting experience, but you multiply that when you go across the border. It's just like things are done differently in different places. And it's fun, and it can be exciting to experience those things, and your life will never be the same. Who you are as a human being is never the same after you travel and you realize that, hey, there's different ways that people live and experience life and travel through the process that we all travel through. Not to get too woo with you, but to me, I that was the greatest gift I ever got, was growing up and being able to live in different places in the world and living on the economy, not just living on a base where you're surrounded by like people who are just like you.
Right. And typically that is the expat story. Now, depending on what country you're living in, you may be in a compound setting, but 9 times out of 10, or even 8 times out of 10, you're living in the local community. Some people may choose to live in a more expat local community. Some people may choose to live in a more local national community, or somewhere in between. And so you're part of daily life, and the daily frustrations that everyone experiences living in that country, you will experience too. I've essentially lived in 11 countries at different periods, from anywhere from a month to 4 years. So it's a different experience in each of those places, and the countries have their own challenges. I lived in a war zone. I lived in Afghanistan for a period of time. I've lived in Singapore for a period of time. And those are vastly different countries with vastly different ways of life, and what I had to do in order to be an expat in those spaces.
My dream is a world where there aren't any borders and we can all just kind of like mingle, because I think that the more that we mingle, the more that we find out that we are each other. There is not a
Right.
whole lot of difference between us. Um, and it kind of makes me excited to see you out there doing something like this, which really just paves the way for people and makes it easier for them to actually experience living abroad and working and interacting with people that they might never have interacted with before. Um, so how do people get in touch
Yeah.
with you, and what kinds of people would be best served by contacting you?
Sure. So I would say folks who are career professionals who are willing and able and wanting to use your current career experience. So you are an accountant, you're an engineer, you're a university administrator. So whatever your current profession is, you still enjoy working in your profession. So let me add that piece to it. But you want to do that in another space, in another place, another country that continue to serve your purpose. And it may be a place that needs additional development and growth. It may be a place that is on a trajectory to be different. The UAE has been on a trajectory for the past 15 years. Singapore has been on a trajectory for the past 20 years. We have a variety of countries on the continent of Africa that are boosting their trajectories right now. You've had the Central European bloc that have been boosting their trajectory for the past 15 to 20 years as well. So you could end up in those regions, but you could also end up in places like the UK, depending on what the UK is looking for, or Australia, depending on what Australia is looking for. So it just varies based on your skill type, your what assets, what expertise you are bringing to the table. And those are the folks that I tend to work with.
I have a thought about, people that move from the United States to places like the UK or Australia, and that just because they speak the same language as you, or even Canada, it doesn't mean that things are going to be just the same as they are in the United States.
No, and I actually have a true story. One of my closest friends, she's like a sister to me. She left the United States and moved to Australia. And I know that I had been an expat much longer and been in the field, to put it that way, longer. And she would call me. She's like, what is this? What's going on here? This isn't. And she's like, the language, this is not what this word means. Or they're saying this, but it really means this. Or why do they say brekkie? Because it's really breakfast. And I was like, exactly. So while it may be English, or the customs are different, or yes. And I always love people who say, I just want to go to another English speaking country. I was like, yes, that other English speaking country is going to be still very different, and you're still going to have to adjust.
And the cultural things that they do are very different. I mean, you just like, just because they speak a similar language and it is not the same language. I went the international school, we spoke English, but it was, we had Australian teachers and we had British teachers and we had American teachers, and we had a few other languages, teachers that spoke different languages but spoke English to us as students. But I can remember, fringe and rubbers and getting on things meant, you were supposed to go sit at. Just, they're little things, but when it's coming at you fast, you're like, whoa, I gotta translate here.
Right. You are going through a translation process, and people don't realize that. Yes. So I do say that, just understand that while you may choose to go into a English speaking country, that would be Australian English, British English, Singapore English, And we can go on because each version of English in each country has its own nuance.
Mm-hmm. And as the countries, like Japan, for instance, everybody's taught English in Japan, but as it actually evolves, the languages evolve in different areas. So while they might have learned in a certain way 30 years ago, today it's different, and it's not necessarily like where it was when they were first learning, because they evolve it to being, because a lot of people in other countries transact daily in other languages, and English is one of them.
Right. Yes.
Whereas people from America tend to think, I don't have to learn another language. Everybody speaks English. Well, yes and no. Everybody speaks,
right.
Everybody except Americans generally tend to speak more than one language. 3 or 4 is like the starting point.
Very true. Very, very true.
So Karla, how would people get in touch with you, and what is the best way to get in touch with you?
Okay. The best way, a couple ways to find me. The quick ways to find me are on LinkedIn and on my Instagram. The best way to reach out and learn about us, the Career Expat by Rosappa Global, is to go to our website, www.thecareerexpat.com. And out there, you will find a variety of information from our coaching services. I promote health and wellness and self-care for expats. I also promote travel because I love to do that. But that's, we try to service as well-rounded as possible in the expat space. And then I also have an ongoing blog that I write in regards to higher ed perspectives for my higher ed folks, and then definitely for my expat folks. I write more pieces that kind of give you the on-the-ground realities of living as an expat, the day-to-day frustrations. I also write about the celebrations too, and the fun things, like I love to go to the spa, so I write a lot about, if you're a spa person, some of the best spas that I've been to, and taking advantage of that.
That's wonderful. So what's the one thing that you hope the audience takes away from our conversation today?
One is that take the opportunity to explore whether or not this is for you. Is part of your purpose moving abroad? It's not for everyone. But if it is, explore it to its fullest. You can go down that path and decide not to go, and decide that it's not for you. I had a client that did that. She's gone through the entire program with me. She got a job, interview, was flown to the location for an interview, and then at the end of it, she goes, "This is not for me." And she's like, I prefer to be stateside. But she would have never known that if she hadn't explored it to its full potential. And I think that's what I really want to leave someone with. If you're thinking about it, explore it to its full potential.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Jill.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another empowering episode of the You World Order Showcase podcast. We hope you've enjoyed hearing from our incredible life, health, and transformational coaches who are making a profound impact on the world. Remember, change begins with you, and you have the power to transform your life and the lives of others. If you want to take that next step and unlock your true potential, visit thecoachesalchemist.com, where you can find the 3 ways we can help you for free to spin your talent into gold with clarity, a system, and a plan. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an inspiring episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more people with our positive message. Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and upcoming guest announcements. You can find us on Facebook at the U World Order or simply visit thecoachesalchemist.com.